This jar holds eggs from 8 months ago, and they're still fresh. The method is called water glassing. It costs almost nothing, and it takes 10 minutes. No refrigerator, no electricity, no special equipment, just pickling lime, water, and a trick farmers have used since the 1880s. Let me crack one open right now so you can see. That jar has been sitting in my pantry since last September. No fridge, no electricity, just a simple mineral solution that costs pennies per gallon. The technique is called water glassing, and it was standard practice before refrigeration existed. But here is what nobody tells you about this method, and it has nothing to do with the eggs. They call it the bloom. It is the invisible coating a hen applies to each egg the moment before she lays it. You cannot see it, you cannot feel it, but that microscopic seal is the only thing standing between a fresh egg and every bacteria in the air. Water glassing works because it leaves that bloom intact and locks it in place with a layer of calcium carbonate for over 100 years. This was not a homesteader hack. It was standard domestic practice. Fannie Farmer included the exact recipe in her Boston cooking school cookbook in 1886. The United States Department of Agriculture published bulletins on it. Farmers filled crocks with lime water every autumn and had fresh eggs through the following spring. No one questioned it because no one needed to. The method worked. Then something shifted. In the 1970s, the egg industry consolidated into massive operations with hundreds of thousands of birds under one roof. Contamination risks spiked. The solution was not to improve housing conditions. The solution was to wash the eggs. Hot water, detergent, sanitizer, high-pressure spray. Every egg sold in an American grocery store is legally required to go through this process. It kills bacteria on the surface, but it also destroys the bloom. The egg is now porous, naked, defenseless. The moment that shell leaves the wash line, it must be refrigerated and kept cold until the second it hits a frying pan. The very act that makes an egg legally clean makes it dependent on the power grid, and this is where the tension lives. Because the same agency that mandates egg washing, the USDA, does not recognize water glassing as a safe preservation method. The FDA actively warns against it, but the warning has nothing to do with the science of the lime solution. It has everything to do with the fact that the washed egg in your refrigerator has already lost the one thing water glassing requires. The bloom was stripped before you ever saw the carton. If you try to water glass a store-bought egg, it will rot. The regulators are not wrong about that. What they never mention is why every American egg lost its bloom in the first place. The bloom was not a flaw. It was the egg's own immune system, a flawless, biocompatible seal that kept pathogens out and moisture in for weeks at room temperature. A hen applies it in the final seconds of egg formation. It dries instantly, and for most of human history, it was the only thing that stood between a farm family and food poisoning. That coating is so effective that an unwashed egg stored at cellar temperature will remain perfectly edible for over a month without any treatment at all. The lime solution in water glassing simply reinforces what nature already provided. This is not a chemical preservative. It is a mineral lock that fills every microscopic pore and hardens into a second shell. Bacteria cannot pass through it. Oxygen cannot degrade the yolk, and the egg stays exactly as fresh as the day it was gathered. Fannie Farmer knew this. She was not a scientist. She was a cook, the principal of the Boston cooking school, and her cookbook was the most trusted kitchen reference in America. On page 474 of the 1896 edition, she gave the exact ratio. 1 part sodium silicate to 10 parts water. Boil, cool, pour over fresh unwashed eggs arranged small end down. Keep in a cool, dry place. Nothing else. No special container, no pressure gauge, no temperature monitor. The liquid cost less than the jar it was stored in. She also noted that lime water worked just as well. By the early 1900s, county extension agents across the Midwest were distributing mimeographed instruction sheets showing farm wives how to water glass eggs in 5-gallon crocks. The USDA itself published Farmer's Bulletin 1423 in 1928, describing water glassing as a reliable preservation method. The bulletin included diagrams. It specified that eggs should be infertile, gathered promptly, and never washed. The government was teaching citizens how to keep eggs without electricity, and for 40 more years, nobody argued with the science. Then the American egg underwent a complete transformation. Before 1960, most laying hens lived on diversified farms in flocks of a few hundred birds. Eggs traveled short distances, were handled by local grocers, and consumers knew the farmer. After 1960, chickens moved into massive confinement houses. Flocks of 10,000 birds became 100,000, then 1,000,000. Ammonia-laced air forced molting through light manipulation, and salmonella outbreaks became regular headlines. The industry's answer was not to clean up the hen houses. The answer was to sterilize the shell by any means necessary. In 1970, Congress passed the Egg Products Inspection Act. The law required that all eggs sold commercially be washed in water, at least 90 degrees Fahrenheit, using potable water and an approved sanitizer, then immediately refrigerated at 45 degrees or below. The bloom was rendered irrelevant because the washing process stripped it off entirely. And once the bloom was gone, the only thing keeping the eggs safe was the cold chain. Every link in that chain had to be maintained, from the processing plant to the refrigerated truck to the grocery display case and into your home refrigerator. Break one link and bacteria could enter through naked pores within hours. The law was presented as a public health triumph, but pay attention to what happened next. The same agency that mandated washing, the USDA, stopped endorsing water glassing. The FDA refused to approve any shelf-stable egg preservation method. The reason given was safety, but the unspoken reality was simpler. A washed egg cannot be water glassed. The lime solution cannot replenish what the sprayer destroyed. By requiring every egg to be washed, the federal government made water glassing impossible for the only eggs available to most Americans. The method was not banned. It was simply rendered useless by the upstream regulation, and no official ever testified that this was the goal. But the result was identical to a ban, with one critical difference. The agency did not have to defend itself against angry farmers because the technique still existed on paper. It just did not work on the product in your refrigerator. Consider what happens when the cold chain breaks. A winter storm knocks out power for 3 days. The refrigerator stops humming. Inside, a dozen washed eggs begin to sweat as the temperature rises above 45 degrees. Within hours, the naked pores are vulnerable. The eggs are trash, and that is not a hypothetical. In February 2021, Texas froze over. Power outages lasted for days. Grocery stores threw away millions of eggs. Families who relied solely on refrigerated food had no backup. That fragility was by design. The same government that now warns you not to water glass once taught its citizens how to do it. This day, Farmer's Bulletin 1423 published in 1928, stated that water glassing could preserve unwashed eggs for 6 to 8 months. The bulletin even said the eggs remained good for all culinary purposes. In 1917, the Utah Agricultural College issued Circular Number 22, urging farmers to preserve surplus spring eggs in lime water so they would have fresh eggs through the winter. During World War I, the government distributed posters advising citizens to save eggs by water glassing them. So, what changed? The law did. The 1970 Egg Products Inspection Act mandated washing and refrigeration for all commercially sold eggs. Overnight, the bloom was stripped from every carton in America. But the act did more than clean eggs. It made the cold chain mandatory, a captive infrastructure owned by power utilities, refrigeration manufacturers, and the fossil fuel industry. A family with a crock in the basement was not a customer. A family forced to refrigerate was a revenue stream. Now here is where it gets darker. If you raise chickens in your backyard, you can water glass your own eggs. The method still works perfectly on unwashed eggs. But if you try to sell those eggs at a farmer's market, most states require them to be washed and refrigerated. You can legally preserve your own food, but you cannot sell it preserved. That regulation ensures that the only eggs available to the public are the fragile, washed kind that must be kept cold. The knowledge survived only in the margins, among homesteaders and off-gridders who remembered what their grandmothers did. And when the pandemic hit and grocery store eggs vanished from shelves, a massive surge of people bought chicks. They scrambled to build coops, but without the old knowledge, they did not know what to do with the abundance. Eggs piled up on countertops and rotted. The missing piece was a jar of lime water, a technique that costs less than $5. The erasure was so complete that a 100-year-old solution was treated like a dangerous experiment. But here is the reality. I water glassed that jar 9 months ago. I opened it this morning. The egg I cracked was indistinguishable from one laid yesterday. The yolk stood tall. The white was firm. No off smell, no discoloration. The FDA warns against water glassing, but their own standard is based on washed eggs. They did not test the method on an unwashed bloom intact egg, because the egg they regulate does not have one. The science is settled. The bloom plus lime water equals an oxygen-free, antibacterial seal. That is not opinion. That is chemistry. And when you see exactly how simple the process is, you will understand why this knowledge is being revived by thousands of people who refuse to let their food supply be held hostage by a power cord. Stay with me, because I am about to walk you through the exact recipe, step by step, and show you what happens when you crack open an egg that the grid never touched. Let me show you exactly how I did this. You need 4 things. Pickling lime, also called calcium hydroxide. You can find it in the canning aisle of any hardware store or online for under $5. Water, filtered or distilled because chlorine can degrade the seal. A clean container. Any food-grade bucket or glass jar with a lid. And eggs, farm fresh and unwashed, with the bloom intact. That last part is non-negotiable. The ratio is 1 ounce of pickling lime to 1 quart of water. For a 1-gallon jar, use 4 ounces of lime mixed into 4 quarts of water. Stir until the liquid turns milky white. It will look like diluted chalk paint. Lay your eggs gently into the jar, pointed end down. This keeps the air cell at the fat end undisturbed and prevents the yolk from pressing against the shell over time. Fill the jar until the eggs are completely submerged, leaving at least an inch of liquid above the top egg. Seal the lid tight and place the jar in a cool, dark spot. A basement shelf, a root cellar, a pantry closet, anything between 50 and 65 degrees is ideal. No refrigeration, no electricity, no maintenance. The lime water does all the work. Now let me show you what happens when you open that jar. This is the same jar I sealed 9 months ago. The water looks cloudy, even a little white film floating on top. That film is a layer of calcium carbonate. It is the mineral seal that has been protecting these eggs for the better part of a year. I reach in with clean hands and pull out an egg. The shell looks exactly the same as the day I put it in. Maybe a little slick to the touch. I rinse it under cold water to remove the lime residue. Then I crack it into a bowl. The yolk stands tall and round, a deep orange dome. The white is thick, not watery. No odor, no discoloration. This egg has not been inside a refrigerator for a single second since the hen laid it, and it is indistinguishable from a fresh egg gathered this morning. I scramble it, I fry it, I bake it into bread. It behaves exactly the way you want eggs to behave. If you hard boil them, poke a tiny hole in the wide end first, because the lime solution can pressurize inside and cause the shell to crack. Some people say the whites get slightly thinner after a year, but in 9 months. I have not seen it. The process is so simple that it feels like a loophole, but there is one detail that makes all of this even more remarkable. A detail the official guidance never mentions. In an alkaline environment, like lime water, Salmonella cannot survive. The same pathogen that the egg washing law was designed to combat is killed by the mineral solution that the law made obsolete. The method the government abandoned is demonstrably safer in long-term storage than the refrigerated egg that replaced it. And that brings me to the part nobody talks about. Because if water glassing is cheaper, more resilient, and scientifically sound, why did it disappear from every kitchen in America? The answer is not about safety. It is about control, and the people who stood to lose the most are the same ones who wrote the rules you are still following. The knowledge was never lost. It was buried under a century of regulation, convenience, and the quiet assumption that cold air is the only thing that keeps food safe. A jar of lime water is not just an egg preservation method. It is a statement. It says you do not need a corporation to store your food. You do not need a power grid to keep your pantry full. And you do not need permission to use a technique that worked before your great-grandmother was born. Every egg you water glass is one small act of independence, multiplied across a year. It becomes a supply chain that no one can interrupt. If you raise chickens, you already have everything you need. If you have a neighbor who raises chickens, ask for unwashed eggs. Start small. 1 jar, 10 minutes. See for yourself the first time you crack open an egg that has never seen the inside of a refrigerator. You will understand why this method survived, despite every effort to erase it. Hit subscribe if this kind of practical, forgotten knowledge matters to you. I share these methods every week, and the next one is even simpler. And if this video made sense to you, if it made you look at your refrigerator differently, I have put something together you will want to see. The link is in the first pinned comment. Take a look. I think you will like what I built for you.